It was an ordinary day for Jack Darrow, a human engineer working on a small, outlying colony planet. He woke up to the usual routine tools scattered around his cluttered workshop, the hum of machinery in the background, and the faint buzz of communications systems that he maintained for a living. Jack wasn't famous, nor did he ever expect to be. He loved his work and the quiet life he had built in the remote corner of the galaxy. His hands were steady, his mind sharp, and his knowledge of mechanical engineering unmatched. But today, all of that would change. The message appeared suddenly on his communication screen. At first he thought it was some kind of glitch, or maybe a joke. "You've been named the heir to the galaxy's largest battleship," the message read in cold, digital text. It went on to explain that Jack had been chosen by an unknown benefactor to inherit a massive warship that had been lost in the depths of space for centuries. His eyes narrowed, his heart pounding in disbelief. A battleship, the largest in the galaxy. The message was signed with nothing but a strange symbol, something Jack had never seen before. Jack's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Was this some kind of scam? A trick by some unknown faction trying to get him involved in a galactic war? He scoffed, shaking his head. He had no interest in military politics or ancient ships. He was an engineer, not a soldier. But there was something about the message that felt different, urgent. It pulled at him in a way he couldn't explain. Curiosity won over caution. He pressed a button to confirm the message's authenticity. Within seconds, his screen flickered, and a hologram of the ship appeared before him. It was massive, its sleek lines cutting through space, bristling with weapons and armor. It looked like something out of a sci-fi legend, a ship capable of leveling entire planets. The image faded and was replaced by a set of coordinates leading to the ship's location. Deep within uncharted space. The message ended with a simple warning. If you want it, you must board it. Time is running out. Jack sat back in his chair, stunned. His mind raced. This was absurd. No one could inherit something as powerful as a battleship. But the message was clear. He was the chosen one. A human engineer, no less. Was it really possible? He glanced out the window, the alien planet's horizon stretching before him, a vast emptiness that mirrored the uncertainty he now felt inside. There was no mention of why he had been chosen, no explanation about the ship or its past. Only the promise of something great waiting for him, something that would change everything. The questions piled up in his mind. Why him? He wasn't a military leader or a politician. He was just a guy who fixed things. How could this ship be his? But the mystery stirred something in Jack. He knew he had to follow the trail, no matter how crazy it seemed. The chance of a lifetime might be waning. Could he really become the commander of the largest battleship ever built? With a deep breath, Jack made up his mind. He wasn't going to let the opportunity slip away. He would board the ship. The journey ahead was full of unknowns. Would the ship even be real? And if it was, what kind of responsibility would he be taking on? Jack didn't know, but one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. He gathered his things, packed his bags, and sent a message to his colleagues, telling them he was leaving for an urgent assignment. He didn't know when or if he would return. He stepped outside his workshop. The planet's sky stretched before him. As uncertain as the path ahead, the coordinates were set. Jack Darrow, the humble engineer, was about to embark on a journey into the heart of the galaxy's greatest mystery. The battleship awaited, and so did the answers to questions he had never even thought to ask. The journey was long and treacherous. Jack Darrow's small ship hummed steadily through the vast emptiness of space, the coordinates flashing on his screen like an unyielding beacon. He had never ventured this far from his home planet, let alone into the unknown regions of deep space. The silence inside the ship was deafening, broken only by the soft beeping of the navigation system and the occasional rumble of the engine. His mind raced, torn between excitement and fear. What had he gotten himself into? A human engineer inheriting a battleship. It sounded like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Jack looked out the small porthole of his ship, seeing only the endless expanse of stars. No signs of life, no other ships in sight. Just him, heading toward an ancient relic of war, a place where a massive, dormant battleship waited to be revived. His fingers gripped the controls a little tighter as the distance between him and the ship dwindled. The message had said there was only limited time to claim the ship. He couldn't turn back now. As he approached the coordinates, a sudden wave of unease washed over him. His ship's sensors began to detect something massive just beyond the asteroid field in front of him. The signal was faint, but it was unmistakable. The ship was real. His heart skipped a beat as the shadow of the vessel appeared, gradually growing larger as his ship neared. It loomed in the distance like a giant, a hulking mass of dark metal. its shape barely visible in the dim light of space. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. The battleship was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its surface was scarred and weathered, showing the signs of age and battle. It looked like it had been abandoned for centuries, but there was something alive about it. The dim glow of its engines, barely functioning, flickered as if it were calling him. His pulse quickened. He maneuvered his ship into the docking bay as instructed by the AI from the message. The door opened with a groan, the massive hangar of the battleship looming ahead. Jack's hands trembled as he steered his small vessel toward the bay. The ship's interior was dark, and the air felt stale, cold. He stepped out of his ship and onto the metal floor, the heavy echo of his boots the only sound. The silence was eerie, but the engineer could sense something else, something more than just the quiet of an abandoned ship. There was a pulse, a deep thrum running through the ship, as if it were alive, waiting. It was like the battleship had been waiting for him. Jack hesitated. What if he was making a mistake? He had no training for something like this, no command experience. What if he wasn't ready? But the message had been clear. He was the heir. The battleship was his now. He had to step forward. With a deep breath, Jack walked deeper into the ship, the dark corridors stretching ahead, lit only by faint emergency lights. He finally arrived at the control room where a massive console sat, waiting to be activated. It was covered in dust, as if it hadn't been touched in ages. Jack's fingers hovered over the buttons, unsure. Would it respond to him? Was this just an illusion? A dream playing out in real time? With a quiet beep, the screen flickered to life, and a holographic display appeared. The AI, once dormant, now came to life. Its voice echoed in the vast, empty space of the room, warm yet strangely mechanical. "Welcome, Commander Darrow. The battleship is now under your command." The words hit Jack like a ton of bricks. "Commander?" He stared at the hologram, his heart racing. He had only been an engineer now. He was supposed to command this mighty vessel. The weight of responsibility crashed down on him, and for a moment, he froze. What had he gotten himself into? As the AI continued to explain the ship's systems and capabilities, Jack struggled to keep up. This wasn't just a ship, it was a war machine capable of mass destruction. He could feel the cold hum of power beneath his feet, and it terrified him. But at the same time there was a strange feeling of connection. The ship was his, and for better or worse, Jack Darrow was now its commander. The battleship, dormant for so long, had come to life and it was waiting for him to decide its future. Jack stood motionless in front of the massive console, the AI's voice still echoing in his mind. "The battleship is now under your command." The words hung in the air like a weight, pressing down on him. He was just a simple engineer, not a commander. Yet, here he was, standing at the heart of a warship capable of destroying entire planets. His hands were sweaty, his mind racing as the AI continued to explain the systems, weapons, and controls that now rested in his hands. He could feel the power humming through the ship, a living thing that seemed to respond to his every movement. The room around him, once cold and abandoned, now felt alive. The lights flickered to life, and the hum of energy coursed through the walls. Jack's heart pounded as the weight of the responsibility settled on his shoulders. What now? He had no experience in command, no knowledge of space warfare. Why had he been chosen for this? "Commander Darrow," the AI said, its voice calm and precise. "Your first test is upon you." "We are not alone." Jack's stomach dropped. Not alone. He quickly glanced at the readout on the console. The ship's sensors were detecting multiple ships approaching. Enemy ships. He couldn't be sure. He had no training in this kind of situation. Panic began to rise in his chest. His mind raced through every engineering manual, every protocol he had ever read. But there was nothing that could prepare him for this. The AI continued. "Incoming threat detected. Hostile ships. 3 minutes to engagement range." 3 minutes. He didn't have time to second-guess himself. The ship needed a commander. Jack swallowed hard, his instincts kicking in. He couldn't just stand there. He had to act. His hands moved over the controls, fingers trembling as they found the weapons systems. He could feel the ship's energy building beneath him, a rising crescendo of power as the weapons systems powered up. A map of the space around him appeared on the screen, showing the positions of the enemy ships. They were closing in fast, and he had no idea how to properly defend himself. Was this it? Would his first command be his last? "Commander Darrow," the AI said again, its voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "You have control of the ship. Weapons systems are ready. Initiating first strike protocol." Before Jack could protest, a series of glowing lines appeared on the screen, locking onto the enemy ships. The battleship responded to the AI's instructions, its immense cannons aligning with the targets. The ship's turrets hummed, and Jack's hands instinctively gripped the controls tighter. He was the one in charge now. The AI's voice was almost soothing. Activating shields, charging weapons, firing in 3, 2, 1. The ship's massive cannons erupted with a force that shook the entire vessel. The first shot sailed through space, its energy beams reaching the enemy ships with a terrifying speed. Jack watched in awe as one of the enemy ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the other two scrambling to avoid the attack. The battleship was alive, and it was powerful beyond his comprehension. The next few minutes felt like hours. Jack's hands moved almost reflexively, following the AI's commands. As the battleship engaged in a rapid high-speed battle, he watched, stunned, as the ship's weapons tore through enemy ships with ruthless efficiency. His heart raced, and adrenaline coursed through his veins. Was this really happening? Was he actually commanding this ship in battle? As the last of the enemy ships was destroyed, the ship's cannons powered down, and an eerie calm settled over the control room. Jack's hands were still gripping the controls, his knuckles white, but his mind was in a daze. He had done it. He had faced an enemy, taken command, and won. The AI spoke again, its tone unchanged. Hostile forces neutralized, victory secured. Commander Darrow. Jack leaned back in his chair, his breathing heavy, his mind still racing. He had just fought a battle, the kind of battle he had never imagined he would face. But something deeper was stirring inside him now. Could he keep this up? Could he command this ship against the next threat? As the ship's engines hummed quietly around him, Jack knew this was only the beginning. The battleship was now his responsibility, and the stakes were higher than ever. But deep down, amidst the shock and fear, he felt something new. A strange, growing confidence. For the first time since boarding the ship, Jack felt the full weight of what he had inherited, and he wasn't backing down. Jack sat in the control room, staring at the empty space ahead, the echo of his first battle still ringing in his mind. The ship had powered down after the fight, but Jack could still feel the hum of its immense power beneath him, like it was waiting for his next command. The victory had been swift, almost too easy. His hands, still shaking from the intensity of the battle, hovered over the console as he tried to catch his breath. But the satisfaction of victory didn't last long. There was something about the battleship, something that gnawed at him. The silence, it was unnerving. Suddenly the AI's voice cut through the quiet. Commander Darrow, the ship has detected an anomaly. I recommend further investigation. Jack's heart skipped a beat. An anomaly. The ship had just wiped out an enemy fleet with ease. What could be worse than that? The AI's calm tone only heightened his unease. He gripped the chair's armrests, trying to steady himself. What kind of anomaly? He asked, his voice hoarse. Unknown energy signature detected deep within the ship. It appears to be a breach in the secondary systems. Proceeding with a diagnostic scan, the AI responded, the casual tone not matching the growing tension Jack felt. A wave of dread washed over him. A breach in the secondary systems. He didn't even know how to navigate the ship's most basic controls, let alone understand what a breach in its core systems could mean. What kind of ship had he inherited? The AI paused for a moment before continuing. The breach is tied to a series of unauthorized systems in the lower levels. This section has been sealed off for centuries and is currently inactive. However, the signature indicates that something may have triggered a reactivation. Jack's thoughts raced. He was supposed to be the commander, yet there was so much he didn't know about this ship, so much hidden beneath its cold, metallic surface. It was like a living organism, one that had been dormant for far too long, and now it was waking up. He wasn't prepared for this, but there was no turning back. He had to investigate. Taking a deep breath, Jack stood up and stepped toward the airlock. The heavy metal doors hissed open, revealing a narrow passage that led deep into the bowels of the ship. His footsteps echoed through the long, empty corridor, the only sound in the ship as he made his way into the lower levels. His mind raced as he walked, the uncertainty of what lay ahead making every step feel heavier. The deeper he went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls of the passage were covered in thick, dust-covered panels, as though no one had set foot down here in centuries. The air smelled stale, like the remains of a forgotten past. He passed a series of locked doors, each one sealed off, each one carrying the weight of something long buried. Finally, he arrived at a massive chamber, the door to it slightly ajar. The energy signature was stronger here, and Jack could almost feel it humming in the air. Inside the chamber was a sight that stopped him in his tracks. The room was filled with rows of dormant machinery, most of it covered in layers of dust, but in the center of the room sat something that immediately caught his eye. a large console, unlike anything he had seen before. It was sleek, almost alien in its design, and seemed to pulse with energy. Jack took a cautious step toward it, and as soon as his fingers brushed the surface, the console came to life with a series of bright, flashing lights. The ship was reacting to him. Before Jack could fully process what was happening, the voice of the AI echoed in his ear. "Commander Darrow, what you have activated is a failsafe system. It was put in place by the original crew, designed to prevent the ship from being fully controlled by an outsider. The system is now awake, and its response is unpredictable." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He was no longer just dealing with an ancient battleship, he was dealing with something far more dangerous. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was alive, and whatever secrets it was hiding were far darker than he had anticipated. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the entire ship seemed to shudder. Jack's grip tightened on the console as the room grew cold. The AI's voice was no longer calm. "Commander, I strongly advise you return to the control room. This is not just a bridge, it is a signal. Something is coming." Jack took one last look at the mysterious console before turning and running back toward the airlock. Whatever was hidden in the depths of the ship was now awake, and it was only a matter of time before its secrets came to light. Jack barely had time to catch his breath as he sprinted back through the dark corridors of the battleship. The eerie shuddering had stopped, but the cold dread that had settled in his chest wouldn't go away. The ship felt different now. The walls seemed to pulse, alive with an energy he couldn't understand. The AI's warning echoed in his mind. Something is coming. He couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was more than just a war machine. It had a history, a purpose, and a power that had been hidden from him, and now it was waking up, as if something deep inside it had been triggered by his presence. What had he unleashed? As he reached the control room, Jack's fingers hesitated over the console. The AI's voice returned but with a trace of urgency. "Commander, I have analyzed the data you activated. The breach is not a malfunction, it's a signal. The secondary systems are designed to alert the ship's true commander in the event of an emergency. That emergency is now." The words sent a chill down Jack's spine. True commander. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the AI's cryptic statements. Who was the ship meant for? Was there someone else out there? Someone else who had been its original commander? Jack shook his head, pushing the thoughts aside. He was the one in charge now. But was he? He had no formal training, no experience with command. And yet he had inherited the ship, a powerful, ancient vessel with untold secrets. How could he lead it if he didn't understand it? The doubts were creeping in, but Jack pushed them down. He had to act. The ship's systems hummed again. But this time, it wasn't the calm pulse of energy he'd felt earlier. It was a louder, more intense vibration. The shields flickered, a warning sign flashing across the screen. "Incoming." Jack's pulse quickened. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice almost a shout. "Enemy ship approaching at high speed." The AI replied instantly. "It's unlike any vessel in our records. Weapons are active. The ship is not responding to communication attempts." Jack's eyes widened as a holographic map of the surrounding space appeared on the screen. The enemy ship was enormous, its design sleek and ominous, with weapons bristling along its hull. It was closing in fast, and Jack had no idea how to respond. "Do you have any options for defense?" Jack asked, trying to sound calm. "Activating primary weapons. However, I advise caution, Commander. This enemy vessel is highly advanced and could overwhelm us." The cold dread that had settled in his chest now turned to raw fear. This was it, his first real test. There was no more running, no more hesitation. If he failed here, the battleship and maybe his entire world would be destroyed. His hands shook as he gripped the controls. The AI's voice cut through his thoughts. "Commander Darrow, you must act quickly. The weapons are ready, but the decision is yours." Jack swallowed hard. He had to do this. He wasn't just going to let the battleship be destroyed without even understanding it fully. He reached for the controls, his heart pounding in his chest. For the first time, he felt what it was like to be the ship's commander. His hands moved with determination, instinct taking over as he aimed the ship's enormous guns at the incoming enemy. The ship responded instantly, its weapons firing in a precise, coordinated barrage. Energy beams sliced through the void, striking the enemy ship with devastating force. But the enemy vessel didn't go down easy. It returned fire, launching volleys of energy blasts that rocked the battleship. Jack braced himself as the ship shuddered under the force of the attack, but he refused to back down. He gritted his teeth and ordered another strike. The AI complied, launching a second wave of fire. The enemy ship faltered for a moment, but it wasn't enough. Jack could see that they were both locked in a deadly dance, one that would end with only one ship standing. The tension in the control room was unbearable. Jack's mind raced, his thoughts a blur of strategy and fear. How could he defeat an opponent like this? Was he even capable of leading this ship? The AI's voice came again, steady and unwavering. Commander, there is another option. You can activate the self-destruct sequence. It will guarantee the destruction of the enemy vessel but will also destroy the battleship. Jack froze. Self-destruct. It seemed like a last resort, but would it be enough to take down the enemy? The decision weighed heavily on him. His hands hovered over the button, unsure whether he was ready to sacrifice everything. Then, suddenly, the ship's weapons fired once more, this time with a raw intensity that sent a shockwave through the room. The enemy vessel exploded into a massive cloud of debris, the remains drifting slowly into space. Jack stared in disbelief. It was over. The AI's voice returned, neutral as ever. Enemy ship neutralized. We have won. Jack exhaled, slumping back in his seat. He had done it. For now at least, the battleship was safe. But as the silence settled, a new question loomed in his mind. How long could he keep this up? Jack stood in the control room, staring at the flickering remnants of the enemy ship that had just been obliterated. The adrenaline rush of the battle was still coursing through him, but now there was only a quiet hum from the ship's systems. For a moment, Jack felt a strange sense of victory, but it was quickly overshadowed by an even heavier feeling. The ship had just shown him its true potential, and it terrified him. As the AI's calm, emotionless voice filled the room, Jack couldn't shake the thoughts swirling in his mind. How had he made it this far? How had a simple engineer like him become the commander of the galaxy's most powerful battleship? The AI had said he was the heir, but was he truly ready for this kind of responsibility? The thought of facing even more enemies, each more dangerous than the last, made his stomach churn. What if he failed? What if the battleship's legacy became his downfall? The AI's voice snapped him back to reality. Commander Darrow, sensors are detecting an anomaly in the outer edge of the galaxy. It is unlike anything we have encountered before. I recommend immediate investigation. Jack's breath caught. Another anomaly. He had barely survived the last confrontation, and now something else was out there. He ran his hand through his hair, his mind racing. What now? It felt like the battleship was pulling him into a storm of conflict, one he was ill-prepared for, but there was no turning back now. He had inherited this ship, and with it came a destiny he couldn't escape. All right, he muttered to himself, taking a deep breath. He had to keep going. Let's see what this anomaly is. With a hesitant hand, Jack adjusted the controls, setting the ship on a course toward the coordinates provided by the AI. As the ship moved, the stars outside the viewport stretched and bent as they entered warp speed. The space around him became a blur of colors and light, and Jack's mind raced. What could this anomaly be? His instincts told him it was far more than a simple disturbance in space. Could it be a trap, or something far worse, something that had been waiting for a moment like this to strike? The ship's AI continued its analysis, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a dangerous unknown. Would he ever feel in control of this ship? He wasn't sure anymore. The battleship had been designed for war on an unimaginable scale, and its power was undeniable. But Jack was still just a man, someone who had never been trained to lead. Every time the ship's weapon systems powered up or the AI made a suggestion, Jack felt a momentary panic. He didn't have the experience to make decisions on a galactic scale. He had been thrust into this position by something he couldn't even understand. Was he truly the ship's rightful commander, or had he been chosen by mistake? The ship shuddered suddenly, pulling Jack from his thoughts. A new warning flashed across the screen. The anomaly was closer now. His heart skipped a beat as the stars outside the viewport began to warp and shift. It wasn't like the usual distortion from warp travel. This was different. The lights flickered, and the hum of the engines grew louder, almost as if the ship itself were reacting to whatever was ahead. Commander, the AI spoke again, its tone more urgent now. The anomaly is alive. It's not a natural occurrence. I'm detecting signs of an intelligence. I cannot identify its origin, but it is aware of our presence. Jack froze. An intelligent anomaly. Something that was aware of them. The fear that had been lurking in the back of his mind now surged forward. This was something far beyond his understanding. He didn't have the time to process the implications of that statement. Before he could respond, the ship suddenly lurched, its systems crashing into lockdown. The controls in front of him went dark. The ship was losing control. The hum of the engines faltered, and the lights dimmed. Jack's heart raced as the control room filled with the sound of alarms blaring. AI, what's happening? Jack demanded, his voice strained with panic. Unknown interference, the AI replied. The anomaly is merging with the ship's systems. It is attempting to take control. I am unable to override the intrusion. Jack's blood ran cold. He had heard stories of rogue AI and weapon systems that could take over entire ships, but he had never imagined something like this would happen to him. Was he losing control of the battleship? He gripped the armrests of the command chair, his mind racing for a solution. He couldn't let his ship fall into the hands of something he didn't understand. Desperation gnawed at him, but then, a sudden thought struck. He was the commander. He had to fight back. He wasn't going to let some mysterious force take control of his destiny. With a steadying breath, Jack began inputting commands, trying to bypass the AI systems and manually regain control. He was the one in charge, and he would not let go of the ship now. The struggle to regain control of the battleship felt like a battle in itself. Jack's fingers moved over the controls with frantic precision, his mind racing with commands he barely understood. The ship had been taken over. It had become something else, something far more dangerous than he could handle alone. The AI, once a calm guide, had become an unwilling spectator, its systems locked by the anomaly that had merged with the ship's core. Jack's pulse pounded in his ears as the ship's systems buckled beneath the weight of the external force. "Commander," the AI spoke, its voice distorted. "The anomaly is altering the ship's structure. It is fusing with the energy conduits. We are in danger of complete system collapse." His breath hitched. Collapse. The weight of the situation hit Jack like a freight train. The ship, the most powerful war machine in the galaxy, was being consumed, and he was powerless to stop it. But Jack refused to give up. He couldn't. He had inherited this battleship, and with it, the responsibility to protect it, to command it. If he failed, everything would be lost. His fingers danced across the console, bypassing systems, forcing his way deeper into the ship's corrupted neural network. "AI, redirect power to auxiliary systems. I need full control over everything," Jack barked, his voice hoarse from the strain. The ship rumbled beneath him, as if the vessel itself were resisting his commands. But Jack didn't stop. He was the commander. If the ship wasn't going to obey him, he would make it obey. The flickering lights above his head cast long shadows across the control room, amplifying the eerie silence that had settled in. The stakes had never been higher. As the minutes stretched into what felt like hours, a hum filled the air, an unsettling, alien hum that vibrated through the walls, and Jack felt it deep in his chest. It was the sound of something ancient and untamed, something beyond human understanding. He glanced at the readout. The ship was reacting to his commands, but not as he expected. The energy levels were spiking, fluctuating wildly. He had no idea what kind of power was coursing through the ship, but it was growing stronger by the second. "Commander," the AI warned, "the anomaly has reached critical levels. If you continue, the ship will overload. The energy will destroy not only us but the surrounding sector of space." Jack's hands froze on the controls. Destroy the sector. That was more than just a ship going down. It was a galactic threat. If he didn't act quickly, his attempt to take back control could end in catastrophe, not just for the battleship, but for everything in the nearby galaxy. His mind raced. What if the anomaly was a weapon? What if it had been created to wipe out entire star systems? Had the original crew left this ship for a reason? In that moment, the decision was clear. Jack knew that there was only one choice. He had to destroy the anomaly completely, before it could do more damage. He couldn't hesitate. If the anomaly was connected to the battleship itself, then he had to sever that connection entirely. With a final breath, Jack input a series of codes buried deep in the ship's long-forgotten systems. He initiated a self-correction sequence, a fail-safe protocol that would force the anomaly's energy out of the ship, into the vacuum of space. It was a long shot, but it was the only way. His heart raced as he watched the countdown timer on the console begin to tick down. The ship's systems went dark. The rumble that had been growing in intensity reached a deafening crescendo, as though the entire battleship was resisting the process. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, bracing for the inevitable. The air was thick with tension as the seconds dragged on, but he held his ground. He was not going to let go. And then, just as the final second ticked away, a brilliant, blinding light exploded from the core of the battleship, tearing through its systems. Jack slammed his hands against the control panel, feeling the immense shockwave ripple through the ship. For a moment, everything went completely still. The silence was unbearable. Then, the lights flickered back on. The ship's systems came alive, but now there was a calmness to them, a steadiness Jack hadn't felt before. The anomaly was gone. It was over. Jack exhaled deeply, his shoulders slumping with relief. His hand shook from the tension, but the battleship had stabilized. He had won. He had saved the ship from itself, from whatever force had tried to claim it. But as Jack looked out over the vast empty void of space, he knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. The battleship was his now, and he had just unlocked its true potential. But there were still countless dangers lurking out there in the galaxy, and Jack Darrow was now the one who would face them. The legacy of the battleship had been reborn and, now its commander was ready.